Hello, it's crime time, and today's crime is one of the most gruesome ones you've ever heard. It takes tons of years for a person to engrave their name in history for their good deeds and righteous acts to the society. But some people are remembered by the society for their horrendous and terrifying acts. Peter Bryan, a clear example of such monsters, is a name that evokes a sense of profound tragedy and horror within the realm of criminal justice and mental health. His life, marked by severe mental illness and a series of heinous crimes along with manslaughter, has become a case study in the challenges of managing individuals with severe psychiatric disorders. Early life. Born on October 4, 1969, Bryan was the youngest child of the 7 children of his immigrant parents from Barbados. He attended junior school, Shaftesbury in Forest Gate, and later on attended Trinity Secondary School in Canning Town. He grew up in a difficult environment with continuous stress on money and life necessities. At the age of 14 or 15, he left his school and got a job at a clothes stall. Later, he got a chance to teach cooking lessons at his local soup kitchen. In 1987, around 18 years of age, Bryan attempted to throw a resident from the 6th floor window in East London. He was a psychopath from the very start, and the signs of aggressive behavior were noticed by all, but due to negligence to take action against him, he became the psycho killer he is known for today. He killed 3 people over a 10-year span, during which he had been in and out of psychiatric hospitals. Bryan, who suffers from schizophrenia, has confessed on multiple occasions to wanting to eat people. Initial criminal behavior. Bryan's criminal behavior can be traced back to his early episodes of uncontrolled anger and aggressive tendencies toward those around him. In 1987, he was residing at the Flying Angel in Custom House, East London, a period during which his violent behavior first became a matter of serious concern. The local police were alerted to an alarming incident involving Bryan when a victim reported that he had aggressively attempted to throw another resident from the building's 6th floor window. The distressing event was characterized by the victim as an unprovoked and unwarranted attack, suggesting that Bryan's aggression had no justifiable cause and was entirely irrational. Despite the severity of the situation, the police, following their standard procedures for such cases, took minimal action. They issued a warning to Bryan but chose not to take further steps to address the dangerous nature of his behavior. This decision, or rather the lack of appropriate intervention, proved to be a grave mistake. The failure to properly address and manage Bryan's aggressive tendencies at this early age set a precedent for his future actions. It is widely regarded as a significant lapse in judgment, as it allowed Bryan's violent inclinations to fester and escalate unchecked. This early incident was, unfortunately, only the beginning of a series of increasingly severe behavioral issues that would ultimately lead Bryan down a path of extreme violence that could have potentially been prevented. In 1993, Bryan was working in a clothing shop which was managed by Nisha Sheth, a 21-year-old shop assistant. The poor girl was murdered brutally in front of her brother by Bryan after she confronted him for the clothes he had been stealing from the store. After his actions were brought to light, Bryan was gravely offended by Nisha's behavior towards him, and this is when he got the crazy idea to kill her. While she was working in the shop, Bryan approached her with a hammer and struck her hard, making her fall to the ground. Her brother, who was also present in the shop, tried to help his sister, but was also struck by Bryan on the head, causing him to bleed heavily and fall to the ground. Bryan then continued his horrifying murder by continuously beating Nisha's head with a hammer, to the point that her brain was exposed to the gory action. Her brother, who got back on his feet, saw his sister's beaten-up face and ran outside to help, but Bryan noticed him running outside and quickly ran after him. The chase continued for a while until people on the streets noticed the bizarre scene: a man running after another injured person with a hammer in his hand. They quickly intervened in the incident and helped the poor boy who had just escaped a psycho killer. The police were immediately called to get Nisha to the hospital, but unfortunately, the poor girl didn't survive and was pronounced dead at the scene. After the police were reported, they tracked him down within a half an hour and managed to find him hanging through a tall building's balcony. He jumped from the building and broke the bones in his legs, but survived. But he told the cops he wanted to end his life with this jump, but something snapped in his mind, and he landed on his feet first. Even after his arrest, Bryan refused to accept that he had killed Nisha. In 1994, Bryan was sent to Rampton Secure Hospital after finally admitting to the murder of Nisha Shaith. He spent his next few years in the hospital until February 2001, when the nursing staff thought he had made considerable progress regarding his behavior and aggressive nature. In 2001, Bryan was transferred from Rampton to the John Howard Center after a 6-month trial leave project agreed by the Home Office. He was released into the care of a psychiatrist and social worker. In 2002, after submitting an application to a mental health review tribunal, Peter Bryan was relocated to the Riverside Hostel, situated in North London. This move marked a significant shift in his living conditions, as he was granted a degree of freedom previously unavailable to him. At the Riverside Hostel, Bryan was allowed to come and go as he pleased, reflecting a new phase in his management and treatment plan. By October 2003, psychiatrists at the hospital observed a substantial and noteworthy improvement in Bryan's mental state. This progress was so significant that the medical professionals began discussing the possibility of moving Bryan to more independent accommodation. Their optimism about his condition led them to consider further easing his restrictions, as they believed he was on a positive trajectory toward recovery. The plan was to transition him to a setting that would offer greater autonomy, reflecting their confidence in his progress. However, this decision would soon have unforeseen consequences. The move towards more independent living arrangements, which was intended to be a step forward in Bryan's rehabilitation, ultimately led to a series of events that shocked the world. No one could have anticipated that such a seemingly positive development would culminate in a manner that defied all expectations and resulted in tragic outcomes. In January 2004, social workers submitted an application for Peter Bryan to be moved to low-support accommodation, a type of housing that offers less supervision and more independence. This request was made with the hope that Bryan would transition to a less restrictive living situation while still receiving the necessary support. However, instead of considering this application, the authorities decided to transfer Bryan to an open psychiatric ward at Newham General Hospital. This decision was influenced by serious allegations that Bryan had indecently assaulted a 16-year-old girl. Although there was no solid evidence or concrete proof to support these allegations, the claims were taken seriously enough to warrant immediate action. As a result, Bryan was moved to the psychiatric ward for his own safety, as well as the safety of others, pending further investigation into the allegations. February 17, 2004, not even a month later, Bryan killed his friend Brian Cherry just hours after getting discharged from the mental health unit. Something about this murder was so unsettling that it raised the spark of cannibalism in Bryan. The body was seen by a woman who noticed that an arm from the dead body was completely separated from the main body, and she quickly reported it to the police. When the police arrived at the scene, they came face to face with a terrifying scene unfolding in front of them. After the report was called, the police forced their way into a flat in Walthamstow to find Bryan standing in the hallway covered in blood while the dismembered body of Brian Cherry was on the carpet in the living room, and a small amount of meat was frying in a pan on the stove. Reportedly, the victim had been dismembered and officers found a frying pan on the stove with tissue from the dead man's brain. Bryan told officers, "I ate his brain with butter. It was really nice." He also added, "I would have done someone else if you hadn't come along. I wanted their souls." Bryan was remanded to Broadmoor Hospital after appearing in court over Cherry's death. He was imprisoned in the hospital for the people who are mentally sick criminals. Although the police must have thought his killing streak was over, this man single-handedly proved them all wrong by attacking one of his fellow inmates. He started his attack by strangling Richard Loudwell with the cord of his trousers, applying intense pressure to ensure the strangulation was effective. After restraining Loudwell in this manner, Bryan escalated the violence by forcibly banging Loudwell's head repeatedly against the hard floor. This brutal assault was executed with such force and frequency that it became a critical element of the crime. According to a detailed report into the incident, Bryan's intention was clear. He aimed to kill Richard Loudwell as swiftly as possible. However, the report also noted a grim detail. Bryan abandoned his attempt to complete the murder when he became physically exhausted. His fatigue led him to halt the assault, despite his initial resolve to end Loudwell's life quickly. This crazy man stated his reasoning for letting the poor victim go as intended to kill Richard Loudwell as quickly as possible, but gave up because he became tired. Loudwell was urgently rushed to the hospital following the brutal attack, where he received immediate medical attention in an attempt to save his life. Despite the efforts of healthcare professionals, he succumbed to his injuries just over a month later, unable to recover from the severe trauma inflicted upon him. In the aftermath of the attack, Bryan confided in the duty psychiatrist, revealing the disturbing motivations behind his actions. He stated, "I've had these urges toward Richard Loudwell ever since I saw him. He's the bottom of the food chain, old, haggard. He looked like he had his innings." Bryan's words to the psychiatrist not only reflected his chilling mindset, but also exposed his dehumanizing view of Loudwell, whom he perceived as a weak and insignificant individual, deemed unworthy in his twisted perspective. This statement provided a harrowing insight into Bryan's psychological state and the underlying motives that fueled his violent behavior. He also said, "I wanted to kill him and then eat him. I didn't have much time. If I did, I'd have tried to cook him and eat him." Following the tragic incident, an inquest jury conducted a thorough investigation into the circumstances that led up to the attack. The jury uncovered significant concerns regarding the management and supervision of Bryan at the hospital's secure unit. They determined that Bryan had not been adequately assessed before his release from seclusion. This finding indicated that the evaluations meant to gauge Bryan's mental state and potential risks were insufficient, potentially overlooking critical signs of his violent tendencies. In addition to the issues with Bryan's assessment, the jury also highlighted serious deficiencies in the oversight of the environment where the attack occurred. Specifically, they found that the dining room, the scene of the violent incident, was not adequately monitored by the nursing staff. This lapse in observation meant that staff members were not effectively keeping watch over Bryan and others in that area, which contributed to the failure to prevent the attack. In 2011, an inquest ruled that Bryan had not been watched properly and had not been adequately assessed by Broadmoor staff. As a result of these findings, and considering the severe nature of Bryan's crimes, it is expected that he will spend the rest of his life at Broadmoor Hospital. Broadmoor is a high-security psychiatric facility designed to house individuals with severe mental health issues who are considered a danger to themselves or others. Given the gravity of Bryan's actions and the ongoing concerns about his mental stability, Broadmoor will likely be his permanent residence for the foreseeable future, where he will remain under strict supervision and care. If you enjoyed this video, you might want to check out this one.